Alrighty friends, hello, here we are, welcome. What's the date today? 30th of March 2022 here in New Zealand. Welcome, Wednesday morning, 9 a.m, chat with Matt, here to talk about whatever might be interesting. And it seems that people are interested in a bunch of stuff this morning because I've got quite the list of comments on the post that I put up to notify everyone of this event. I had put a little poster on saying your need. It's a little photo, so I've got my laptop right here. There it is there. So it's a photo of a yurt from up in Otaki Forks, where I've done quite a few little light language sessions and meditations over the years. But anyway, your need for external security is a sure sign that you don't feel inherently safe. That was the post that I put on a couple of years ago. I think at the time I was talking more about finances and, this idea of having money into your retirement, etc., right? The external security that comes from having money in the bank, etc. But anyway, it's applicable to a lot of things, and isn't it it's an interesting inquiry how much effort we put into maintaining an externality of our security, of our safety network, of our, to ensure somehow our survival and potentially our thrival and our standard of living, etc., things that we perceive to be very important to us, both in terms of our ability to relax and enjoy life, and also our status and our ability to feel worthy within ourselves and to feel successful and appreciated and whatever other words are that sort of fit in that. There's another word, but I've lost it. Purposeful almost. Hey Sister Susie. So anyway, I was just put there as a little inquiry because I'm not here to tell people what to think or what you should think or what thinking is going to allow you to be more successful or more happy in the world, right? Because I don't believe there's any particular thinking that you need. I talk a lot about releasing, I talk a lot about relaxing. Hey Sister Jill, I talk a lot about finding self-acceptance and a deeper sense of authentic confidence, etc. But ultimately we come to peace, and I've been thinking a lot about peace lately on multiple fronts, and what we might help us all to move more deeply into this experience called peace and the world peace that is once again quite topical in our societies. So I've been thinking a lot about peace, and I've completely now lost the plot on what I was talking about in security. Are you thinking, right? So I'm not here so much to tell you that you should think this way about security, right? And that no one should worry about locking their doors and that would be more appropriate and that would be more spiritual. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to inspire you to start thinking about your relationship with the locks on your door and the relationship with the concept of maintaining your security and the money in your bank and what it all means to you and how much that is influencing your life and how it is influencing your life. Is it adding to your life or detracting from your life? And ultimately, a lot of these things like locking your door is adding to your life and detracting from your life at the same time. It depends very much on the attitude you have towards the action, not so much the action itself. How much energy are you investing? How much time worrying about things is these concepts taking? And where do these concepts come from? And are these concepts actually warranted in your life? Do you actually need to lock your house? I could let you in on a little secret that we have not locked any of the houses that we have lived in since Marie and I have been married. And that's over 20 years. Honestly, the keys to this house that I'm currently residing in are still in the top kitchen drawer where they were when we moved in. We've never locked it. And we've gone away and we've done all sorts of things. We've never locked it. Now, you can say, well, you're really lucky to live in a place where you don't need to lock your doors. But I can assure you all of my neighbours lock their doors. But we don't. The keys to the car in the car ignition every night, sitting in the driveway, not locked in the garage, but sitting in the driveway outside our house. The keys are in the ignition. If someone wants to take the car, they can come and just jump in and drive away. Nothing's stopping them, but no one ever has. That's the point. We have been robbed once from our house. No one came into the house. They just took stuff that was outside. That happened once. We got it all back on insurance, but well, minus the $500. But the point is, I'm not saying that's the way you should be. That's the way I am. And it's worked for us because we've always believed that it works for us, right? And I know others of you live in different circumstances, etc., etc., etc. And I'm not here to debate the rightnesses and the wrongnesses of locking your house. I'm just using an example to help maybe loosen up the idea that you have to lock your house, that you should lock your house, that if you don't lock your house, someone's going to rob you. Potentially they're going to rob you anyway if your house is locked. They're just going to break in first. All sorts of stuff. Anyway, that wasn't what we're here to talk about. That was just an aside. Natalie expressed her gratitude about appreciation of last week's chat. Deb, Ms. Love, said, I spent 2 months living in a yurt, mixed feelings looking at that image. So that was a sort of a relationship that didn't work out in the end for Debbie. And so this is another interesting point that Debbie has illuminated here, that we have memories from our past of situations and experiences that we now attach to objects and places and various images, right? So now the image of a yurt triggers the memory of failed relationship, etc., which failed a short-term relationship, right? That no doubt benefited Debbie in some way, and the other person involved, no doubt, in terms of gaining wisdom and growing and expanding and having an experience, right? But there's pain there, and society deems that anything that comes to an end has somehow failed. Which is a crazy concept, right? Crazy concept. You know, society doesn't really honor or accept or appreciate the fact that you can have a short-term relationship with someone that is incredibly beneficial, even if it's not particularly comfortable towards the end. Anywho's, but so these, you know, feelings get entangled with all sorts of things and do provide and do inspire quite a bit of influence over how we now perceive something, a situation. So now the idea of living in a yurt is tainted for Debbie in this particular situation for a period of time based on sort of relatively recent memories around living in a yurt before. This is happening with all of us, right? This is peculiar to Debbie in this particular situation. And we're all doing this with all sorts of objects and images and situations in our life, right? Where the past is influencing how much we can enjoy, how much we can accept, how much we can embrace and prosper and benefit from anything that turns up in our life today based on past memories of something similar. Jill wrote, if don't lock doors or windows and then get robbed, insurance company won't pay out. Well, that's not actually the truth here in New Zealand. I don't know if it is actually the truth in New Zealand. I used to think that as well, and then I checked with my insurance company and they assured me that it was fine. Right? They actually assured me that it was fine because the stuff that was taken from our place wasn't locked. It was in an open garage. And so I was worried that we wouldn't be insured in that case, and we were. And then I asked more further that if people had come into my house and taken my computer, would I be insured about that? And they said, yes, you would be under your contents insurance. So they have educated us to fearfully lock up tight, but is it actually in the law? This is the point. These wives' tales. And I'm not saying that it's not the truth. Maybe in the UK and maybe with your particular insurance company it is the case, but with my particular insurance company here in New Zealand, it wasn't the case, that wasn't in law, and that actually I was still insured with my house unlocked. So yeah, well, if you can actually identify the clause in your policy, then it's in your policy, but it's not in our policy. So that's It's an interesting point of difference. But I always thought it was in my policy because I'd been told, probably by my parents or whatever, that that was the case, that you had to lock your house, otherwise you wouldn't be insured. You do get a discount for having an alarm, but you don't actually have to have your alarm on to be covered. So yeah, if an alarm is installed on your house, you get a discount. That's true here as well, because they asked and I said, well, we do have an alarm, but we never use it. And they said, well, that doesn't matter. As long as the alarm is functional, then you get a discount. So yeah, so there is an alarm on this house and that is counted, and that gives us a discount even though we've never ever used the alarm. The point is, we believe a lot of things that aren't actually the truth. A lot of people believe that you have to do certain things, that it's in law. You know, it's even propagated by our government that there are certain laws around what you must do and should do. And yet quite often that's a lie. It isn't actually in law. Like these mandates are not actually, many of them are not actually in law. It's just suggested that that would be a good thing to do. And they put out the belief, they propagate the belief that it's against the law not to do it. But they know they can't actually pass such a law, so they don't. But they create the belief that they have, and therefore everyone follows through. And then everyone starts talking to each other about, if you don't do that, you're not doing the law. And the people actually dob each other in around these things that aren't actually in law and aren't actually lawful. This is how our society is working. So I'm not saying that, you know, you don't have to lock your house and your insurance company will cover you. You do definitely need to read your policy around that. But what was interesting for me is I always thought that I did, and I always thought that I was taking a risk, and I still didn't lock my house because I don't really give a fuck, to be honest. And, you know, I don't want to... See, do you want to be possessed by your possessions? You know, do you want to have your behavior controlled by owning things, quote unquote owning things? Who owns what, right? If you have to, you know, spend time locking your house, and this is just an example, right? If you have to spend time locking your windows in your house before you leave to keep all of your possessions safe, you know, how much time does that add up to through your life of doing all of this checking and locking and da-da-da-da, and then coming home and having to unlock and reopen and do all of that stuff? Is the possessions that you're protecting actually worth that amount of energy? Right? It's an interesting inquiry. I'm not saying yes or no to either, right? And everyone's situation will be different, and depending on what they have in their house and depending on how likely it is that they get robbed, etc. But most people don't question it. They've just been trained into doing it because it is the right thing to do. It is the normal thing to do, to spend this time locking and securing your possessions before you leave, and then unlocking and opening up your house when you get home. And some people stay locked in their house. Some people feel for their own personal safety. They're not just protecting their possessions, but they're protecting their personal safety by locking themselves in their home so that they don't get assaulted. And unfortunately, the truth is, in some parts of the world, that is a necessary precaution that is sensible to take. You know, I count myself very lucky that I don't feel the need to do that. Although people, of course, do get assaulted in their house in New Zealand. It's not that it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen very regularly. And I'm not intending for it to happen to me because I don't worry about it. Sister Susie, Dad always said if they're going to break in, they will find a way. Better to leave the window open so they don't break anything to get in. Yeah, and you know, I sort of ascribe to that as well. If someone really wants to take our stuff, then they will. How often do people come up to your door and check to see if it's locked because they wanted to come in and take some stuff? I don't know. Obviously, they don't do it here because otherwise they'd come in and take the stuff. But a lot of people think, I presume, that if the door's locked, then that's going to deter people from doing it. I don't know. This was just intended to be an inquiry to inspire some thinking on your part and to look at your relationship that you have with all sorts of things, not just locking your doors and you know, but how much energy you're putting into trying to create the situation that feels safe. Which brings us into what Jen asked. Miss Jen Burns, I noticed that there are times that it doesn't feel safe to create spaciousness and relaxation. The word acceptance comes up, but there is something about responsibility that overrides the nudge to slow down. I am responsible for this, so I have to do everything in my power to make sure I fulfill my responsibility. There's an intensity and a scarcity to it, even fear. Can you speak to this energy around responsibility, fear, and scarcity? Yeah, that is true, Jill. Insurance companies are some of the biggest scammers on the planet. They're in the business of making money. That's what they're in the business of. But I've only ever had good experiences with insurance companies, so I'm sticking with that. I've only ever had good experiences with insurance companies, so I don't choose to embrace the belief that they're out to scam me. Otherwise, I wouldn't even give them my business to start with. And everything is false security. You know, insurance companies, money in the bank, you know, banks are some of the biggest scammers as well. And we all know that if everyone went to the bank to get their money out, there would not nearly be enough money, right? So we all know that. It's a huge Ponzi. And those numbers that are in your bank are only there based on the idea that we're all agreeing to leave our money in the bank. Because if we all wanted to take our money out of the bank, we would not nearly have enough money to cover everyone. So, you know, it's a house of cards. It's a house of cards. All of this security, stock markets, shares, various other, you know, agreements. Cash itself is just an agreement that a bit of paper, a bit of plastic with a number written on it is actually worth something. If we all stopped choosing to believe and honor that, then the cash or the plastic is basically worth nothing. So we're living in a house of cards, a construct that gives us this sense of security and this sense of prosperity and wealth. It's all made up. It's all made up, my friends. Where is your real security, right? It's in your heart. It's in your heart. It's in your understanding of the being that you be, an aspect of God, source, divine, having an experience here in this playground, much of which this playground is just projections, like in a movie theater, projections of situations that give you the ability to have an experience, right? Security it's a story, it's a narrative, it's a belief system. So understand that, and that will help you move through the world in a much more expansive way. Anyway, so the great thing I love about Jen's question and this inquiry is it doesn't feel safe, right? And so we have to understand, well, we don't have to, but it's going to benefit us all to understand to some level what these feelings are and how important is the feeling of safety as opposed to the knowing of safety. Do we know ourselves to be safe as an aspect of the divine? Or are we more concerned about I don't feel safe because I've been programmed to believe that I'm responsible for fixing this situation and it's not yet fixed. Therefore, I have a responsibility to ensure that somehow I keep trying everything at my disposal to fix this situation, right? And if I don't fix it, then I'm a failure. And failures are not safe. Failures are not acceptable, definitely not appreciated, and therefore are not going to receive the support from my circle, my community, the people who are keeping me accountable to what I feel responsible about. Right? There's so many different layers of narrative and story and belief system built into this. There's a huge amount of should here, that we should try everything to be deemed responsible in trying to fix or succeed with a current situation that's in front of us. Maybe one of the best things that you could try to resolve the situation would be to actually relax, would be to actually create that spaciousness so that you can receive some more inspiration, some more intuitive guidance about how you might work with the current situation. But our society hasn't trained us to do that. Our society doesn't help us believe that. Our society has indoctrinated us with the belief that we should keep hustling. We should keep grinding. We should keep trying. We should keep applying effort, right? This is the way that we've been trained through school. This is the way that society has influenced us and educated us, indoctrinated with the hustler, the trier, the person who never gives up is honoured and elevated in our society, right? The person who keeps sacrificing everything to try every last way of achieving the result that they believed was the right result, right? It's not even what they have to do or should do, it's what they believe that they should do, will prosper in the end. And yet many of us have seen many examples in our lives of people who have run themselves into the ground. Many of us have had our own experiences where we have tried everything and not been willing to give up on a particular belief, only to really, only to our detriment, right? Of exhaustion and frustration and, draining our resources, our money even, right? As we keep trying, don't give up on this business, right? Just keep plowing everything into it until it, completely crashes and fails. Whereas maybe if we had backed off earlier, we might have come to some understandings or some inspiration about how to better deal with the situation. So it's very common that it doesn't feel safe to relax. That is very, very common. And we have to understand that that is an old program in our field. And not only is it an old program, but it's a current program. It's a sustained program by society around us, which is telling us not to relax until you have achieved all of the conditions you need in order to justify your relaxation, right? You have your safety now in the bag, and yet there are so many conjectures or potential problems around being safe that will anyone ever get to the situation where they feel completely safe and secure enough to relax if we are trying to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and ensure that we've done everything possible. Is it possible to do everything possible in an infinite universe? Right? When do you draw the line? When do you say enough is enough? When do you give yourself permission to take a breath and relax and go, you know what? I need space here. Even though it doesn't feel comfortable to take that space. It doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel appropriate based on my programming to do so. But you know what? I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to take the risk and go against the feelings that I'm feeling, because I know the feelings are indoctrinated. I know the feelings are not actually for my highest and best good. It's programming, and I'm not saying that that's a conspiracy, although I think it is, but it just is anyway, a program that's running, right? I think that's undeniable, whether it's been delivered with the idea that it's appropriate or whether it's been delivered to keep you chained to the wheel, that's debatable, because it depends who delivered it to you and under what circumstances, right? Our parents have been responsible for indoctrinating us with a lot of these beliefs, right? Locking the house, for example. My parents locked the house. I grew up in a house that was always locked. Somehow I broke out of that pretty quickly, actually, without much fuss for myself. There's various reasons. One, I lived in a house that didn't have locks for a little while. Basically, we lived in a shed, Marie and I, for a while. But even before that, I was pretty loose about locking. But no, the point is our parents indoctrinated us with a lot of these beliefs from love. They truly believed that this was the right thing to do. This was the most beneficial thing to tell their children, to keep them safe, to help them be acceptable and normal, right? We were induced into doing a lot of things, influenced and educated by our parents so that we would stay normal and acceptable and safe in our society, right? That our peers, the kids at school would accept us because we're not doing weird shit around them, etc., right? A lot of these things were delivered through love, not through some malicious intent to keep you disempowered. But society has kept this whole thing running potentially from a malicious intent to keep you disempowered, right? Jill wrote, there's safety for now, and then we're instructed to make plans to be safe into retirement too. One hell of a programming job. Yeah, this idea that any of us can ensure safety into the future is quite delusionary, right? And sure, we can do things that help us be prepared for our futures. You know, I've done things that help me prepare for my future, whether it's short-term future or long-term future. We're always doing things to help prepare for something that might happen in the future. Like I'm just sitting here and there's water stored in this very room in case we have a big earthquake and we lose water for periods of days, right? That's a potential that could happen. Do I worry about it a lot? No. But one of the reasons I don't worry about it is I've actually invested some energy in storing some water, right? So, you know, do I have money in the bank? Of course I do. Do I have a KiwiSaver retirement plan? Yes, I have that as well. But how much emphasis do I put on these things and how much time do I spend worrying about it and how contracted am I around it? You know, when I've been in India, one of the things, you know, my early trips to India, right, when in my mid-20s, when I first sort of got into yoga, incredibly liberating or mind-blowing for me. You know, I had a lot of experiences there that helped me really blow away the protein myth example and how much I needed to eat to stay healthy and active. You know, when I actually worked alongside Indians there, you know, this is out in rural India where they eat next to nothing and certainly very little protein. And yet they work from sunrise to sunset 27 days in a row and then have one day off, the dark moon, and then come back and work. And yeah, there are some religious festivals and stuff that happen most months, etc. But the point is that their bodies were sustained. They're not particularly big people, not particularly fast or particularly strong, but incredibly resilient, have huge amounts of endurance and huge amounts of capacity to do work, right? To actually get work done, right, by hand, mixing concrete, carrying concrete, pouring concrete, chipping stone, building these huge buildings, right, with manual labor, living on, you know, amount of food that would leave me starving. But yes, they're doing it. And watching this with my own eyes, right, really helped me to change my beliefs around how much I needed to eat in order to sustain my body, right? You can be told this shit, but until you have a real life example of it, until you see it with your own eyes and realize that what I've been trained to believe needing as a male adult needing 80 grams of protein a day in order to sustain my, you know, my health, right? I started to question that. Is that actually the truth? Because I'm looking at people who are basically in exactly the same biology as me, having nowhere near that for their whole lives, right? And they're not home popping pills and supplements. These are very simple rural people, and they live to quite a old age as well. So the point is not to talk about, you know, vegetarianism, protein, and all of that. It's to recognize, what are we believing, and is it really the truth? Exactly, Fiona, and Fiona knows. Digestion is one of the most energy-consuming processes of our body, and all of us, generally in the West, eat far too much, and it's an incredibly inefficient way to power our bodies, right? Incredibly inefficient way. And there's reasons why we eat, and a lot of it's tied up in our emotions and in our stability and all sorts of things, but we're not going down that path because I don't really have the time for that. I've probably already, I'm just trying to start my computer back up, blowing my time, yeah, and I'm nowhere near finished reading all of the questions. So, I think I've done it, Jen. I think I have spoken to this energy around responsibility, fear, and scarcity. These programs are there. And we just have to recognize, as I've just been elucidating with the whole thing about protein, are these proteins, are these belief systems, right? These programs, are they valid? And I think if we can relax into the inquiry as to what are we believing and why are we believing it, and is it actually valid to keep believing that, I think we can make some very expansive progress in our ability to interact with the world if we are willing to question what we are believing, why we are believing it, and is it beneficial for us to keep believing that? Or can we divest ourselves? Can we expand out of the control and the influence that a lot of these beliefs have over us? For example, that we must lock our doors, otherwise we will be robbed. Like we must have money prepared for our retirement, otherwise we are going to starve and be dejected. You know, I was going to say about in India, one of the other things that I noticed is people don't save for their retirement, right? Because they live in communities where it's acceptable that they know they will be looked after. They know they'll be looked after into their older years when they cease to be able to do so much productive work and earn enough to feed themselves. Other people will feed them because they live in a community where that has been done for generations. Not just their own family, but other members of the community. It is acceptable. It is an ongoing program in their society that is what is done. And so people don't worry about it. And so everyone is looked after. And of course, they're not living very, expansive, opulent lifestyles. But needless to say, they don't worry about their security. They don't worry about their safety. They don't worry about having their needs met because they've witnessed in their own eyes that this belief is propagated that everyone is looked after in the village. That the people will go out of their way to make sure that everyone is fed and everyone has a place to sleep out of the elements. That is understood, and so no one worries about it, and so it keeps happening. Our society, we've somehow managed to divest ourselves from such beliefs, and to the point where if you don't have enough money, you're out on the street and no one is going to look after you. And so we've created these situations where we have to worry about our future, right? Because we've had our community, sense of community eroded by the powers that be, by the people who are controlling our narratives, controlling our belief systems, controlling the situations. So they are, Fiona said, older people are still valued once they stop producing. They are. They're still valued as a store of wisdom. People still come and talk to them because they want to gain understanding and wisdom. These older people still look after children for periods of time. They still do some form of food preparation or some form, whatever they're capable of doing, they do it, right? They do it. Everyone wants to be a contribution, and everyone contributes to the community to the ability that they can, and that is recognized and accepted, right? It is not hierarched. You're not more important because you do more physical work any more than you are valued more because you have more wisdom, right? Both are needed for the survival of the community. People need to go and work in the fields, and people need to understand the weather patterns and tell the others that it's likely to be a period of drought for some time because the weather's been doing this for the last few weeks, and they've been observant because they've learnt through history, through experience, right? So they're a receptacle of wisdom. And it's their job to pass that wisdom on to the next generation coming on to take that responsibility as the elders of the community, right? So anyway, we need to move back to that in some degrees, right? Because at the moment, our society is well broken. And it doesn't mean we need to let go of all of our technology. It doesn't mean we need to let go of a lot of our comforts, and it doesn't mean we need to let go of advances that we've made. It doesn't mean we have to stay stuck in a primitive village lifestyle to have a village lifestyle. We can bring the social elements in and not lose our standard of living. We don't need to lose our standard of living. Yeah, adjust it maybe slightly. Maybe we don't need quite as much space for each individual as we currently believe, but the opportunities are there, right? The opportunities are there. They're just not being presented to us at the moment because it doesn't benefit some sections of our hierarchy for that to happen, right? But it doesn't benefit to allow us to relax out of the stress that if we don't keep grinding, if we don't keep producing, if we don't keep going to work doing shit we hate, that we're not going to be safe into our future. They don't want us to believe that we could live another way where our safety was assured, quote unquote, and we didn't need to sacrifice ourselves quite as much. They don't want us to know that. So that's, not propagated. Anywho's. I think I've talked to Gwenny's thing about having to lock everything in France, and I'm not saying stop locking everything, I'm just saying relax into it. Fiona wrote, one good thing is that's come from the CV situation is many people are looking to move back into our truer, I'll put in there, way of life. Exactly. It has helped people question a lot about how valid what we've been doing has been, and I think that is very, very valuable. And I agree. Jill wrote, I was going to ask about acceptance, responsibility, and seeming to keep on needing to repeat things. This is leading to frustration about not being able to get things to happen, feeling trapped, and feeling security is at risk. Yeah, so awesome. I'm a bit muddled at the moment, which is also awesome. This experience of muddled and this experience of frustration is what's the right word? Evidence. It's evidence that you are making progress through this situation, Jill. Let go of your frustration and find acceptance that this is a very confusing time. This is a very muddling time, and this is a very frustrating time. I've been incredibly frustrated. I've been incredibly low on motivation. I've been incredibly slow to act on all sorts of opportunities and things, right? I've not found a high risk tolerance for actually getting out and doing so. I haven't had much motivation to do a lot of stuff recently, and I'm not sure how much of that is to do with the virus thing, because I've talked to a lot of people who've had the virus, and it's a very common symptom is a complete lack of motivation for many weeks afterwards, and that's an interesting program that might be part of this experience and part of the whole thing. And I'm not going to open that can of worms right now, but I also believe that there's an energy around that in our society, and whether that's more astrological or whether it's to do with the solar flares, etc. But it's quite common. So relax into acceptance and trust that it's your responsibility to give yourself space and to trust your own heart. And it's not your responsibility to get things to happen, right? Man proposes, God disposes. It's not our job to ensure that everything happens the way that we think that it should. We can't control the world to that point of view, and we have to let go of trying to control the world to that point of view, or we just create stress in our being that limits the ability for stuff to happen in a beneficial way. Okay, I'm nearly there. Sam. I've really enjoyed considering this inquiry today. It's one of our basic human needs to have safe shelter, but should our security be based on locks and keys, or was this a narrative that we were sold to make us feel afraid of our neighbours? Yeah, right, and part of this breaking out. Because in these villages in India, do they have locks on their doors in these villages in Rajasthan? Absolutely not. Half the time they don't even have doors. They have a curtain, right? Nothing is locked. Nothing is locked in the village, right? Because people aren't worried about other people coming in and stealing things because someone else will see them do it, right? There's a community around them. People are everywhere, and people basically trust each other. I'm going to keep reading this, and I'm going to come back to the last bits of what's on the thing before we wrap this up. And I know I've been going longer than I anticipated. Fearing our neighbour also dampens our desire to communicate openly. It can make us feel like we need to hide and protect our world from an invisible threat. A roof over our heads to provide shelter and a nurturing space for our physical bodies, and divine authentic light in our hearts to carry us to anywhere in the world and feel like we're safely home. Awesome. So there wasn't actually a question there, but it's a great wrap up, Sam. So thank you of what I've hopefully been talking about. The safety is in our heart. Security is in a more expansive belief of what we be. And the fact is, if we get robbed, do we really lose anything? Do we really lose anything that's important? We've been sold into this idea that we're supposed to accumulate stuff because it keeps us safe and helps us relax in our retirement, right? Have some happiness in our future if we keep accumulating shit, right? And then we have to look after that. Now we have a responsibility to lock our doors to keep our shit safe from others who might want to take it because they haven't been as lucky as us in their ability to earn and to accumulate the stuff that is perceived to carry the outcome of happiness in it, right? This stuff is supposed to make us happy, supposed to help us relax and to feel secure in the world because we've got all this stuff. And of course, some of it is very utilitarian and we like having the stuff, right? I've got this phone and this computer, very, very helpful for me doing what I feel is purposeful. And I don't, mistreat the stuff because I appreciate what it does for me. So, it's not that we just let all of our stuff go completely but at the same time, how much energy are you investing in worrying about trying to protect your stuff? And is the amount of energy you put into worrying about trying to protect it more than the actual energy that it would take to re-get the stuff if it was to actually come to some harm? This is the point, right? This is the energy balances we need to think about a little bit and to come to some rational conclusion about how much energy we're investing in the worry about protecting stuff as opposed to how much it would actually take to regain the stuff if we were to come to some mishap. Anywho, so I wanted to just check what Fiona and I think it was Susie maybe wrote in. Jill wrote, nurturing procrastination at the moment. Yeah. Just be with procrastination. It's it's labeled as a big wrongness, but just be aware of how much the thoughts are running, and are you actually benefiting from the process of procrastination, as opposed to the label of procrastination, which can quite often be put on top of just taking your time, which could be beautiful, expansive time staring out the window at nature, where you're not actually procrastinating about the choice that you have. You're just giving space to allow a decision to arise from deeper within you. So the term procrastination can mean running in anxious loops of trying to figure shit out, or it could also mean just giving time and space to allowing a more inspired decision to arise. And of course, they're completely different in their draws on your energy and how beneficial it is to invest time in nurturing procrastination. Right, but a lot of people just make procrastination full stop wrong. You should make a decision, you should make it now, you should move on, right? That's the way society tries to program us. And to me, what's the point of being alive if you're not going to allow yourself to have the experience of procrastinating over a choice, over an opportunity that you have, right? Fiona wrote, lots of people were reporting extended lethargy from CV, but we're also been in a state of uncertainty for 2 years now. Yeah, and that uncertainty definitely will have drained people's energy reserves, right? This uncertainty has created an ongoing deep-lying stress in the biology of people, and that has created, endocrine drain, right? The adrenals and various other, production of stress hormones has been going on at a heightened level for the last 2 years around all of this uncertainty that has been projected very virulently from media sources, all sorts of media sources, and community conversations that has left people depleted, deeply depleted. And we need to address that, and we need to look at how these societal stressors are basically greatly reducing the vitality of humanity, right? People are getting wrecked biologically out there in the world because they are not nurturing themselves, they're not caring for themselves, and they're not detaching from these fear-based narratives that are creating ongoing deep-level stress that has a very, very deeply detrimental effect on biological health and mental health. So yes, and yes, planetary aspects as well, Susie, are definitely part of the thing. Margaret wrote in, what a relief to hear about lack of motivation. I thought that it was unique to me. Thank you. We live in a town of 1,200. We never lock up the house. Perfect. I love that. Yes. And please, 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 my friends, don't make yourself wrong for feeling lack of motivation at the moment. Honor it as an opportunity to spend time resting, and at the same time, choose to find a level of motivation that you can do things that are caring for yourself. Not so that you can get back to being fully productive, just so that you can sustain your life force and you can move into a greater state of happiness, which arises when vitality comes. So be willing to do things that help you through the process of being unmotivated. And that might be just getting out for a walk, etc. But don't make yourself wrong. Don't make yourself wrong, because adding another layer of wrongness to unmotivated, it just drives you deeper into depression, right? And that's a very common, that when we start getting quote unquote depressed, we start fearing the label of depression, which actually depresses us further, right? Or we go running to the doctor to try and get some pill that's going to magically fix the situation, which doesn't generally end so well. Jill wrote, I do both styles of procrastination. Gold medal winner here. I find that this is Margaret. I find that processing prior to decisions is usually wise. Yeah, it can. And there is always the propensity that we need to be mindful of, that we can get lost in looping thoughts, trying to make the decision the right one. And if we overly analyze that, we can drive ourselves a little bit mad, because we recognize that we don't actually have enough information to make the right decision, including the information that we don't actually even know what is right. We don't know what is actually going to benefit us the most. We have a belief system about what decision should look like, and that we should be happy ever after with the decision we made, but that might not be the most beneficial pathway of evolution for us, right? And so if we can trust our heart and just step into making a decision and then allow whatever arises as a result of the decision to be beneficial, then it will be. Okay, friends. I've talked for far too long today. Much, much love to you all. I will be back. I think I'll be back next week. We do have a retreat starting at the end of next week, and I'm not quite sure what day I'm flying. I'm just going to have a quick look at my calendar now. Drive to the airport 11 a.m. No, I will be here next week to do chat with Matt before I head off to the airport and go down to the Nelson region and do a retreat in the Abel Tasman. I'll only be away for a week, and I'm pretty sure I'll be back for the week after that. Yes, I will. So, yeah, chat with Matt should happen without interruption as I run a retreat with Marie in between them. But yes, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, in the meantime, if you feel that I can help you potentially with some private work, or make a recording for you, or just send me an email, right? Or reach out, send me a messenger or something, right? I'm here to serve you guys. You are a community of people, bright lights that I am very, very intent and inspired to help as best that I can. So if you feel that there's some wisdom, if you feel that there's an opportunity for some energetic transformation that I could help facilitate for you, then reach out, right? Here to serve. Much love. Bye for now, friends. Bye-bye.